Hello, Canada, and welcome back to another episode of One Soccer Today with Oliver Platt and Jordan Wilson. I'm Adam Jenkins. This is your post-CONCACAF Nations League edition of OST. Canada have officially punched their ticket to next year's Gold Cup. They'll also be playing for a trophy and will enter the CONCACAF Nations League finals as the number one seed. They will meet Mexico. We will talk all about Suriname. We will talk all about Mexico. We will talk about ESPN and lists, and we will also have a little bit more fun later on in the program as well. I guess it is a singular list. Oliver Platt already making sure I'm staying on top of it. Okay, so the window is complete. The players will head home to their various clubs. Jesse Marsh, I think, will be not quite smug, but very satisfied in his post-window recap. Oliver Platt, first word to you. Your overall takeaways from Canada beating Suriname handedly over two legs.
Yeah, it was a job well done. Clearly superior to the opponent. Never looked in any real danger. 4 goals, 2 clean sheets. I think it was professional, and it was what it needed to be from Canada, even if it wasn't the absolute best football we've seen them play under Jesse Marsh so far. But like I'll keep saying it, and I know people are maybe hesitant to do this with Canada sometimes. This is the best team in the region right now, and they're going into the Nations League finals in March with a wonderful opportunity to win a trophy. Maybe, in terms of the outset of a tournament, the best opportunity this program has ever had to win a trophy, quite frankly, when you look at the strength of this team and the field of teams they're going to be competing with. They're coming off a Copa America semi-final. They're coming off win, draw, and a win against the 3 opponents they're going to face at these Nations League finals. You just continually see teams struggling to deal with the pace this team plays at, the intensity they have. They're not perfect. There's still some work to do, still some areas to improve, and we can talk about those. But when they are able to play games on their terms, and I think that will be the key thing, because they're not a surprise anymore. Teams are going to know what's coming. But when they can play games on their terms, they're very difficult to deal with, I think, for the teams in this region right now. So really exciting time, I think, for this team to be entering a tournament feeling like they can be lifting a trophy at the end of it. I do just have one little complaint, one request. I don't know where you guys are on this. Tell me if I'm being
ornery already in the show.
If I'm being harsh. Can we maybe not do a little bit better than all I do is win as the song after every Canada home win? Like,
okay,
I'm getting a little tired of it. I don't think it has any connection to the team. If I'm being grumpy,
Ollie, two things here, and these aren't important, but they're important. Who's your favorite hockey team?
The Leafs.
What city do they play in?
Toronto.
What's their track record for goal songs and win songs the last 10 years? We can't trust anyone in the city.
Yeah, I didn't mind. What were they
It's
playing?
time for an update. We have some great DJs in football. I'm with you, Ollie. Okay. Jordan Wilson.
We can do better than that.
Okay, you think about what you want it to be replaced by. Jordan Wilson, I want you to chime in on the window.
No, Ollie's right. Canada is the most cohesive team, most informed team in CONCACAF. And I said it yesterday on the post game when we had our show. It's just I want to see them now against that big opponent, right? I think Mexico is going to be a huge test. We'll get into that in a little bit. Playing the U.S., as I said, the Nations League final last June. You saw them be second best. I just want to see them in the big show. Big lights, big camera. Jesse Marsh has built this team now that feels like they're ready for that. Then there's always belief that Canada was good, but as a unit, I think now that there's a strong belief that they can go and get it done on the day. I also think the fact that they've played in a Copa and against Argentina and the Netherlands and they've had success, they feel as if now, okay, look, we've gone toe-to-toe with some of the best in the world. Why can't we be the best in CONCACAF? Like I said, I'm so excited for March because this is what this team needs. We talk about their performance and the way that they've played and the way that they've come together. That only really resonates to everyone if you're the last team standing. And they have an opportunity to do that now. They've earned that. I thought they were clinical and professional, all so right, these past 2 games. To an inferior team, we still have to go and get that job done. You still have to make sure that it was clean and tidy, and that's what they were from beginning to end.
Jordan, since your beautiful mug is already biggest on the screen, let's stay with you. Who impressed you more? We saw a performance of the match from Jacob Schaffelberg. His brace, he covered every blade of grass at BMO Field, or Jonathan David, who continues to score goals for this nation? Who impressed you more yesterday or through the window as a whole?
I'm gonna choose, but I just definitely have to like pay homage to both these players quickly. First, I'll say the little nutmeg that Jonathan David does towards the end of the game to put it on a platter for Tajon Buchanan, that probably on a different day he puts a toe in that and it goes into the bottom corner and it's 4-0 for Canada. This guy and Jonathan David is just playing the game at such a high frequency. Like, he's so smart, he's so clever. If I'm picking a 5v5 team and I have one pick in CONCACAF, but I'll even say just for Canada as well, Jonathan David, because he's just prancing around the pitch and things are slowing down for him. You know, he's just a little puppet master making things work. But I will also say with Schaffelberg, 5 goals in 14 appearances now, bagging a brace in a stadium that he used to call home. This system is made for a guy like that. I don't care what anyone says to me. You can't. The proof is in the pudding. John Herdman, if there was another coach that maybe came in, Schaffelberg wouldn't have been able to flap his wings and to go and score. The fact that he has the confidence to come into that 9 position to score this first goal for the second one, that is by design. I guarantee you, Jesse Marsch told Jacob Schaffelberg, your pace is needed. Don't always stay on the touchline. Come inside, come in the middle. This is what he does. It's a route one ball. Even here, Kyle Lara admitted yesterday that, look, I know he'll be there. Kyle Lara goes off to the corner. Look, head up, first time, whips it. And look, Jacob Schaffelberg knows where he's going to be and puts that in. You see the celebration with his teammates. He knows that pace that he brings. He knows that he's stepping up. I think he's a bigger story because this is something that Marsch put trust in him, and he's answered the call. But I think if you pick a few other coaches, they might not even use him in the same way. So he has to be the biggest one.
Well, what I found interesting too with Schaffelberg's incredible performances, obviously Jesse Marsch was asked about Jacob Schaffelberg after the game, and there was something in his answer about how he still has a lot of growth to do, knowing when to be inside, knowing when to be outside, knowing how to defend it, and just sort of like went through his list. It was almost like you could obviously sense the pride, but for me, it was like, okay, no, this is one of Jesse's biggest, if not his biggest project, and he sees a ton of potential and upside in this player.
Yeah, I was glad that he played him both games because I think at that position, it would be quite easy, maybe more than any other position for Canada to chop and change right now and give different guys opportunities. But I still get the feeling that Schaffelberg, as well as he's done, is still kind of building his confidence as a real starter for Canada and the kind of belief that he belongs in that position, in that role. And I think getting both games, getting a real opportunity to again make an impact, and obviously doing that will be big for him. It matters for him and will do him the world of good. So you can kind of see that development already happening, right? In the first goal he scored last night, he's coming through the middle this time rather than around the side on the left, like you're kind of used to seeing him. And if he can start to add, those different kinds of runs using his pace in more central areas as well as in the wide areas, he can be a real threat.
So speaking of threats in wide areas, yesterday we saw the return to BMO Field of Tajon Buchanan, and Christian Jack was one of the One Soccer crew who was at BMO Field yesterday. He had the chance to catch up with Tajon after the match. Let's hear what the two of them had to speak about.
Christian Jack with Tajon Buchanan. I'm so happy for you to get out there and play. How did this feel after what you've been through this year?
Yeah, obviously been working hard since I was able to walk again and get going. So yeah, to finally come back on the pitch with these guys, super happy.
You're starring obviously in Italy for most of the time. You just spent about 15 minutes there mixing with the fans. How good does it feel to come back to mix amongst Canadians?
Yeah, it feels amazing to be back on home soil, playing in front of family, friends, in front of Canada. To finally come back on the pitch after my injury, can't ask for anything more.
Last one for you, Tajon. I know players, you always remember the losses, right? You've done the Nations League final, you've been there, you've lost. What's the burning passion right now inside of you to get there again in California in March?
Yeah, obviously, a really good 2024 for us. Now it's, keep doing what we've been doing, go into 2025 and take it to another level. The boys have been playing amazing. The coach, everything's been really good. So we just have to take another step forward. And now we're going into the semifinals and with a trophy on the line.
Canada is better when you're on the field. Congrats. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks to Christian Jack. Great to see Tajon Buchanan smiling, walking, and thriving once again in Canada Red. He was a player, of course, that had a lot of people curious to see how he performed, Jordan. I think for many it was just, let's see him on the field again after the incredible road to recovery he's had since that disastrous injury just before Copa. But we've talked about him now. We've talked about Jonathan David, Jacob Schaffelberg. Who else impressed or stood out to you in Red this past few matches? Couple of matches.
I got two names. Both players were exceptional last night. Probably for me were unsung heroes. But I'll start with Kyle Lara, because I mentioned the fact that your number 9 are usually the guys that stay in the middle, say, get me the ball, give me the service. Specifically, too, I know it's not a thing with them, but it's a thing for me. If David scores as well, Kyle Lara says, hey, let me go and get one. Let's even it out. The work that he does off the ball creates things for Canada. Look at him right here. Just knowing that the ball is going to be dumped there. This is for the third goal. Whips the ball across, puts it on a platter for Schafferberg. I remember as well earlier before in this match when it was 2-0, Kamal Miller was in a bit of a bind, which center backs do sometimes. And the only option he has is to really just clip it down the line. Kyle Lara doesn't hesitate, doesn't moan, makes that run, holds it up, ends up playing it to Schaffelberg as well. Like, yes, it's a situation you could always look at a striker at a number 9 and be like, you want him to score more goals. But I just don't see someone else at that number 9 position for Canada that does all the work and embodies a full body of work the way Kyle Lara does. This hold-up play, that run you saw there, a firework went off when he hit the post, which was amazing because when I used to play, or my brother used to play, my dad would yell in his little, it's kind of like a British but some Jamaican accent. Every time he hit the post, he said Rockstone, and I would always be like scared like that. That's what happened yesterday. It hit the post. I'm like, why did the firework go off? But I guess he hit it with so much venom that's what happened. But for me, unsung hero, he's gonna keep climbing and keep exchanging with David in terms of who's gonna be leading for amount of goals for Canada. But I just think he's an exceptional player, and Canada's lucky to have him.
I wonder if that's just like one specific job, that at every game there is someone sitting there with their finger on the button.
Just ready.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
But I was like, you didn't even see it hit the mesh. It hit the post and it went off. I was like, someone was so ready to just
Kyle Lara,
the
they're just
fireworks.
anticipating it.
Hilarious.
All right, Ollie. So the unsung heroes, aside from the person whose job it is to set off the pyro at BMO Field, who was your unsung hero yesterday and from the
Say my
win?
second one, Ollie. You know him.
I'll give you a couple of hat tips. I think Kamal Miller has had a really difficult year. Obviously, for not playing for Canada as much as he would have liked. Club situation maybe not as good as it has been. But whenever he pulls on the jersey for Canada, he's a warrior. He gives everything. You can tell he's a player who deeply cares about playing for his country. He really went through a war last night with some of the hits he took, first on his knee and then on the top of his head. Obviously wants to stay on the pitch and play through it. So commendable as always from him. And then the other one I'll mention, who I think one thing we've talked about a lot is kind of the set pieces, and a big reason that this guy I think is going to have a prominent role because of that is Matthew Chouanier. Because as much as he has a ton of other qualities in central midfield that we can talk about, one thing that he can really do well is put in a good dead ball. And you saw it on the first goal. It wasn't directly from the corner, but the short corner. The initial cross from Chouanier causes havoc. It's such a good ball. So that is a real weapon he has that I think can lead to a prominent role for him going forwards.
Also, Moise Mbito's goal, it was the right call to be called back, but that ball chipped that post. Again, that's just Chouanier putting in great service. Can I say one more, Jenko? We have time.
I miss yours.
I'd be remiss if we didn't. No. There was one more that I thought was dynamite. Won the first half yesterday, but just the whole match. Richie Lara is not a left back.
Yeah.
He could play left back, but he's not a left back.
But well,
He was exceptional last night. I thought as well. It doesn't always work out in every game in terms of Schafferberg's wide, and then Richie Lara comes inside and he's able to run. But the way that they had Suriname scratching their head, who to track, where to go, the way that he picked the moments correctly, when to gallop forward, when to underlap, all those things, I thought that was just exceptional yesterday. I think that's something that Jesse Marshall will look at and say, okay, you picked up these positions at this time, and it was great. There's fluidity between those two. And I understand you're playing a Suriname that isn't as great as a Mexico or Panama or the US. But if you can go to games like that and dominate, I think that's a recipe for disaster for other teams.
One of the things that I caught on the post-game show afterwards with Jordan, Andy, and John Conway was talking about Jesse Marsh and how he's fared so far, his record since taking the helm of this team. Ollie, you've sort of slowly transitioned, let's say, into this quiet assurance that Canada is the best team in the region. So part of me thinks you're going to be satisfied, but not necessarily over the moon with how this went. But when you think of how Jesse Marsh handled this window, what letter grade would you assign him?
I give him a B plus, and that is not based on results because I think the results are what you would expect Canada to get. But I think he made a lot of good decisions that maybe some will play into what happens in March as well. So let's go through a few of them quickly. I think it was the right call to play Dane St. Clair, not just because you necessarily think he's the more informed keeper right now, although he is. But now you have two goalkeepers who have both played important matches this year who are going to feel ready, whichever one you choose for the Nations League finals in March. He handled Alphonso Davies' absence, didn't become a story, didn't become a controversy, just handled it, and the team was fine without him, against obviously a much weaker opponent. Joel Wardsman and Kamal Miller each getting a game. I think that was the right thing to do. Both keep clean sheets, both going to feel good coming out of this window. Again, more prepared if they're called upon. I mentioned earlier, I thought it was the right thing to stick with Ahmed and Schaffelberg and allow them to build some momentum and some continuity. And then you see players like Tajon Buchanan, Junior Hoylett reintegrated into the group as well, who can still contribute to this team, certainly on Hoylett's part, later on in his career. And we're expecting, obviously, Buchanan to be a big player. So not so much the results, but just a lot of things that I think Jesse Marsh continues to get right.
All right, Jordan, B plus from Ollie. What say you?
A plus. The reason
A
why
plus.
A plus. The reason why I'll say I was a bit harsh on the first leg in terms of how tough that pitch was, but they won that game 1-0, and the important part is the nil. Then you come home at BMO, different players come in, like LaBelle comes in off the bench, Theo Bear comes in, like you start Chouanier, Waterman, and Ollie's already touched on this. Waterman and Miller also had full games, big games, both of them, nearly for Kamal. But you switch up your two center backs. So Davies wasn't. I understand we're playing Suriname. Davies wasn't there, and you're almost like, okay, let's save him. Don't worry. It has to be A plus performance. Everyone's on the same page, rowing in the right direction, motivated to move on. They scored 4 goals in 2 games, and they didn't concede one. Like, for me, it's been clinical. It's a great start for them. And now they're just ready for that semifinal in March. They got to go and take it to Mexico.
Well, you mentioned it. They're playing Mexico next, and this is an interesting little bit of the show where we were going to talk about Canada v. Mexico on its own, and then Mexico v. Honduras, but we're a little heavy, and there's no reason why we can't just do it all at once. I will say this. I imagine the two gentlemen also on the show with me were in transit back home after the match and did not get the chance to catch a lot of Mexico v. Honduras, and based on the time we taped the show, I doubt they've watched it back in full yet on One Soccer. So let me tell you this. I was so thoroughly underwhelmed with Mexico despite the scoreline yesterday. I know Gareth Wheeler was puffing his chest and he was on the Javier Aguirre train after he got hit with the beer can. He said they're never going to lose again. 8-0, they're going to win, et cetera, et cetera.
You got half of them.
4-0 flatters Mexico. They took 27 shots against a dreadful Honduras opponent. They missed the net 13 times. It was some of the worst finishing at home that I've seen from an international football team in a long time. And it just gave me more and more reason to feel like Canada, that used to be a Canada problem, finishing their chances, especially when there weren't as many being created. I think, Jordan, Canada comes into this game heavily favored against the Mexicans when they do meet in March.
They shouldn't fear them. I'll make it quick and succinct. They shouldn't fear Mexico. But what I will say, it will always be difficult to play Mexico in Mexico. That will be a thing that in 2035 will still be an issue. That will be a place that will be difficult to go and get wins. But for me, I still think Canada, the way that they feel, they shouldn't fear it. Jesse Marsh said it. I said it pregame. I guarantee you all those players in that locker room and playing for Canada don't fear Mexico. And yeah, it's just a perfect opportunity to go and take care of business because Canada is the strongest side for me.
Ollie, what say you? Luckily for them, they're not playing in Mexico. They're playing Mexico in Inglewood at SoFi Stadium in
Yeah.
March.
Yeah, heavy favorites. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go there yet. I'm certainly comfortable making Canada favorites for this game. I agree. Like, I don't know how much you can read into that win as a really convincing one for Mexico, as much as the scoreline was nice for them. Like, this is a poor Honduras team. Like, Honduras made a halftime sub, and the commentator was like, this guy plays his club football in USL League One for the Charlotte Independents, and it's like, with all due respect, like it's a different level to what we've been seeing Canada coming up against in international football for most of this year. So, you took them up to 2,500 meters and beat one of the worst Honduras sides in recent memory. Well done, I guess, but it still sticks in my mind, like going to see Canada play at Azteca during World Cup qualifying, and all the talk was about like Davies and Buchanan and their pace and how many problems that caused Mexico. And now it's like the whole Canadian team plays at that pace and intensity, right? And I don't know if this Mexican team right now is built for it. So I would be confident if I was a Canadian player for sure.
Yeah, and you always trust the history and the pedigree, but until you start winning trophies and beating opponents consistently. But I think Canada will absolutely feel confident in knowing that a good performance means that they should go through to likely play the Americans, but don't sleep on Panama. Fortunately, we have about 3 months to preview and think about those matches. March the 20th in Inglewood, California, SoFi Stadium, USA v. Panama. Canada v. Mexico at SoFi. We're excited for it. And of course, trophies are on the line. And speaking of SoFi, speaking of USA, let's have a quick word on Mauricio Pochettino, because officially the Mopo era is 2 matches old. The vibes seem better than they were post Copa America, but they couldn't have been a whole lot worse. Oliver Platt, did you see anything enough from those matches from the Americans to really change your opinion on this team, or was it a matter of USA should have beat Jamaica? They did beat Jamaica fairly convincingly in the end and are through to the finals.
I saw enough to think that they're in a decent place and moving in the right direction. Again, it's just a question of how much can you read into it given the caliber of the opponent, because as much as Jamaica are more talented than Honduras are, to give the comparison to who Mexico played, they were very poor at times. Like, you're probably going to be able to tell just from watching these highlights. Like, Jamaica didn't really press, but they didn't really sit in a block and weren't compact either. They were just kind of wide open. And so the US played a lot of pretty football, a lot of positional rotations, looked really good. But I think the opponent was making it quite easy for them to play that type of football. Then on the other side of the coin, Jamaica still scored 2 goals in this game and created more chances than that. And every time they go forward, the US looks a little bit soft defensively. So I think they're going in the right direction. I think Pochettino is a good coach who will eventually get them there. It's just a question of what kind of state they're in March. And again, I'll repeat, I still think Canada's in a better position right now.
Jordan Wilson, the thoughts from you? I know you always have a soft spot for Jamaica, and especially under Steve McLaren. You were high on the hype train. Are you disappointed?
I love Steve. A little bit, but I think also too, Ollie mentioned it, and I couldn't agree more a few days ago, that they're just not a team yet. They also look like, for me, yesterday, that a team that looked like they played the day before. Like, just they have gas. Like, they're not together. There's not enough structure within the squad. I'll say in terms of US being favorites going to finals, for sure they are. I think also too, even if we can predict a world where it's probably going to be, hopefully, Canada against the US, I still think in that final there's a favorite. And I know that's unpopular opinion to Canadian fans, but until they can do it, until they can slay the dragon, then that, for me, the US, Mopo, the players that they have, they're going to be favorites going into that match. That could work to Canada's advantage. I think it should, right? Where the pressure's on them, we're in better form, but no one believes that we're going to win. I think that's a great rhetoric to have to go into that game. But let's not mince words and be mistaken. The US are still the team to beat in CONCACAF. I think Canada can beat them, but they still got to do it.
Still got to do it. Okay, mid-March, end of March. We'll have plenty of time to remind you of when those matches will take place. But
sometime in March.
For a break from the men's national team, and we'll have the women's national team back on the network very, very soon. That's what we're going to talk about next, adjacently, in our Visa Women's Football Report. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the season is winding down in terms of the amount of international football, the amount of Canadian Premier League, Canadian Championship matches, etc. So get used to lists, because every time an outlet publishes a list, it's going to be fodder for us here on One Soccer Today to sink our teeth into it and get some reaction. Last week, ESPN FC put out their top 50 players of 2024. And it should be little to no surprise that A, Canada didn't get a ton of attention from our southern neighbors. B, Aitana Bonmati finished first on the list once again. She did not play against Canada in that international friendly. And maybe, Oliver Platt, maybe we're surprised that Vanessa Gilles was the only player, which makes her the top ranked Canadian on this list of the top 50 players in the world. What did the list get right here?
I think the list is mostly pretty good. Like, firstly, love a list, top 5, top 10, top 50. I don't care.
You do love a list.
I'll take what I can get. So I enjoyed reading this, and like you look at the panel of voters, and it's a very knowledgeable group of people. So sometimes I think these lists have been a bit all over the place, particularly in the women's game, where like you're still trying to build out a body of media or whoever who really are qualified and watch enough football to vote on these kinds of things. But it's a good group of people, and I think they've mostly got it right. Like, I know we always say in Canada, like, oh, we're not getting represented as much as we should be, but the reality is, guys, like, as much as we were impressed with their fight at the Olympics and the way they responded to adversity, we've gone first knockout round exit at an Olympic Games and a group stage exit at the World Cup the year before. Like, that team doesn't contribute 5 or 6 players to the top 50 players in the world. So that's just where we are right now. Gilles deserves it. I think she's going to be the Canada Player of the Year.
Jordan Wilson, what did they get wrong?
Can I focus on what they got right?
Sure. Do that.
Yeah, let's be positive.
I was like, to sift through the 50. I was worried. I was like, oh, geez. Well,
what do you think of pick 46, Jordan?
Like pinpointing every single one. Now, Ollie's right. Gilles was immense, and people might look at, and I've already had some arguments. I won't say some names, but people might say as well, is Gilles the best player for Canada? It's about the year. 2024, the body of work within that calendar year. Vanessa Gilles, like, even hearing her talk to media, speak to media, the 90, whatever, I think 7th minute goal, like, she was immense for Canada at the Olympics. Like, there's no question. So for me, that's a shoe-in for her to have that one. I know people are going to talk about other talented players for Canada as well, but it's about the year that they had. So as much as I'd want to sift through and go through what's wrong with the list, I think everything seems pretty much intact from what I could see.
All right. Hot tips from Jordan Wilson.
The best players, for sure, the best players.
Well. The best. Speaking of the best, tonybet top picks coming up next to wrap up the show. Got to go quickly here, but it is time for our tonybet top picks. And now that the international break is over, that means the playoffs get to resume. No time to talk about the MLS Cup playoff format, but time to talk about some outrights. Oliver Platt, Eastern Conference. Going to give you 4 clubs. Orlando plus 149, NYCFC plus 239. The other New Yorkers, the Red Bulls in Jersey plus 259, and Atlanta plus 547.
I think that's wide open. So take your pick. Like, it may not be smart to pick the favorite, because I do think it's pretty close. But I of those 4 teams, I like Orlando City the best.
Jordan Wilson in the West, LAFC plus 100, the favorites. LA Galaxy plus 181, Sounders plus 503, Minnesota United plus 806. Some love for Dane St. Clair? Question mark.
I got LAFC. I gotta go with the boys that have done it before and that continue to get it done. I can't see. It's crazy when you look at the Eastern Conference though. All these teams, I didn't even pick for them to be in the stage. So what do I know?
It's been a remarkably tight season in Major League Soccer. And hey, we've got LAFC, Jordan. They're also the favorites to win the whole thing, plus 185. But that's for a future show to discuss. This has been One Soccer Today. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. For Jordan Wilson, Oliver Platt, I've been Adam Jenkins. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We will see you back here tomorrow on your home for soccer in Canada. One Soccer.